Okay, so for today's video I want to talk about the Atlantis campaign. This has actually been a project for many years now. It has started as a part work, so I released part 1 as a short PDF. That was followed a couple of months later by part 2 and so on, and it got up to part 5 of a 10-part campaign. And then other projects got in the way, as they normally do, and other books and other things sort of pushed it down the priority list, and it never quite got there. But I determined that I wanted to get it finished, because it occurred to me that when I first started this, I thought, I'm going to set it in a particular region, in a particular city. I'm going to write a city guide for it and so on. And a couple of years ago, I released the city guide to it, even though I was still only halfway through the campaign. So the city guide was intended to follow this as a supplement, and in fact it preceded it by a good couple of years. So I wanted to get this finished, and I finally managed to get it done and get it released a few weeks ago, with the print versions hopefully following any day now. So the Atlantis campaign is set, as you might imagine, in a remnant of the old Atlantis Empire, which is northeastern Kul. So this is an area where Titan is less developed. There is less canon, there is less information about this. Obviously we have the map, and we have a few of the older game books set in this region, but there's not nearly as much information as there is on, say, Atlantia or even the old world. So it seemed a good place to set it. And really it seemed like fate, because in that region you have a city that goes by the name of Arion, which of course fits in well with the company name. Now I think there has to be a subconscious remembering of that name that led to Arion Games. There has to be, but I don't remember any conscious effort to name it after that. So I wanted to set it in and around the city of Arion. We had a couple of game books that mentioned the area, and I looked in those for information. And I wanted it to be, in a way, similar to the Sorcery campaign, so quite sweeping, with travel and dungeons and cities and all of the different elements that make Fighting Fantasy what it is in that 10-part campaign. But I wanted it to be new, because obviously the Sorcery campaign was based on existing game books. But this is not, this is new. And so we set it in there. We've got the guidebook. There is a PDF map that you can buy that describes the city of Arion in detail. And we've got very classic things. So we've got dungeons with various creatures and monsters and things in, and traps and treasures and items. So it feels very classic, very game booky in that respect. But we also wanted, to put some outside stuff in as well as dungeons, because yes, Fighting Fantasy is going through passageways and listening at doors and fighting creatures underground. Of course it is, but it is also travelling across country. And as you can see from this map, we've followed sort of the classic game book idea of splitting up. So yes, you can get to Sondune there, and I won't spoil it by saying what Sondune is, but you can get Sondune, and based upon information you receive there, you can either go left or right. Now both those end up in the same place, but both of them have different implications for that part of the adventure. Both of them have different encounters, different things you find, different benefits, different drawbacks. And so in the same way as the Sorcery campaign, you can go that way or that way. However, as you might remember from the Sorcery campaign, there is one part in the game books, and if you don't go that specific route, you cannot complete the 4-book campaign, which is always a little bit frustrating, and you really wouldn't want that in a role-playing game. So I've made it so that although there are implications, there are consequences of choosing one or t'other of the choices, you still can complete the campaign whatever you do. Obviously, if you keep making bad choices and you keep messing up, it becomes harder and harder to succeed, but you can still succeed. And it also brings in various gamebook-like elements. So both the previous map that you see going cross country and indeed this map here, which is set in the city of Arion itself, both have time mechanics to them. So you'll remember from a lot of the game books, you have 24 hours to do this or find that. And you'll get to certain passages in the game book and it'll say add 1 to your time score, and you note 1 off on the little character sheet where you've got a time track, and when you get to the end you've failed, so you've got to complete it before you tick off that many, or you've been poisoned and you've got to do it before the time runs out or whatever. And so in the previous one, the implications of going left or right are added time, so some are easier to get through but take longer time, and some are harder to get through but take less time. So going with the less time means you're at more risk, which means you might be weaker, which means when you fight later things, and so on and so forth. Similarly, in this one, this is an investigative hunt type session within the city. It's relatively long, and again, you accumulate time scores, and there are implications for taking too much time. So this is intended to give a sort of sense of urgency to this session, to this adventure. But still, while letting it feel like a game book. And it also makes use of the city map. So you can see there a segment from the city map. This is the small version of the city map in the Travels in Arion book. There's obviously a much bigger version you can print as a map available. And it makes use of the city as well. Now, the good thing about the city guide is nothing in there gives away spoilers for the plot of the campaign. None of it gives away spoilers for other adventures the GM might create. So effectively, the Travels in Arion book is a player-facing source book, a player-facing city book. You can read it because it's written as a travel log. You can read it and it'll guide you through the city. It'll give you an idea of what the city feels like, what's there, what buildings, what people, without explaining the secrets that a GM might use. So again, if you're going to play through the campaign and you're the director, feel free to give a copy of Travels in Arion to your players and say, here, read this. This will give you an idea of the city you start the campaign in. And it's a 10-part campaign with a sort of fairly epic ending and so on. But it also introduces a new school of magic as well. So we do have an upcoming magic companion that is being written, and it will include this magic school in its entirety, but there's enough in the campaign to get you going with it, and that's primal magic, which is a more primitive but also quite a powerful form of magic, and it can be learnt by existing wizards and sorcerers and so on. And it is quite powerful, but it does cost quite a lot of experience to learn, and you've got to find the specific spells, and they're not freely available. And obviously this campaign, because it's built around that magic school, does hand out some scrolls and some books with existing spells on. But the magic companion will flesh that out that much further and give you more options for that. So the 120 odd pages of this campaign are split into 10 sessions, but each of those, or 10 chapters, each of those chapters is probably going to take 2, 3 or possibly even 4 game sessions to run through. So although it's a 10-parter, you've got potentially almost a year's worth of campaign within that book. I'm really happy with it. I'm really happy how it's turned out, and this really is the first new campaign for AFF. We've obviously got the sorcery campaign, and there are obviously quite a few new PDF adventures that we've released over the time, but this is the first long campaign for AFF. I'm pretty certain there will be more, maybe not quite yet, and I think if I do it next time I'm just going to write it and release it, because that puts more pressure on me to keep going with it than a part work. But we shall see in the future. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of background about the Atlantis campaign without giving away any spoilers, so you can watch it as a player and not know what is going to happen. And hopefully you enjoy running it and you enjoy playing through it. So thank you very much. Till next time.